All right, man. What's going on?
Well, not much. I was just telling you about my sauna woes. I'm pretty excited. We got a sauna, but unfortunately, it's just been sitting and occupying precious real estate in my garage because I can't get anybody out to wire the thing up. So a little bit of a tease to just have it mocking me standing there. But hey, a nice problem to have because at the end of the day, it'll be a nice way to retreat at the end of the working day.
I was going to say, we all have our crosses to bear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Are you gonna crank that sucker up super hot?
I don't know, man. I things like that. I don't feel the need to engage in like the sporting aspect of it. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be
Right.
something relaxing. It's not a tough guy
It's not
competition.
pain tolerance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
Well,
we'll see.
as always, let me do what I typically forget to do, which is give the shout outs. So thanks to everybody for watching and listening. If you want to help support VNR, go to variednotrandom.com. We've got tons of cycles that people love, enjoy, and benefit from. Get your first strict pull-up, toes to bar, ring muscle up, handstand walk. There's a 1.5-mile run program. There's more in the works that I can't say now, but we're close to launching some new ones. Then, if you are a gym owner, you own any sort of a fitness facility, you want to track workouts, you want gym management, and you got to take care of billing. And btwb now has an all-in-one solution for gym owners for all of that. So if you're interested in that, go to btwb.com/all-in-one. Get more information, get yourself signed up, and life will be great. Okay, so first, the question that we're going to tackle today is from Ben, who asked us to not say his last name, but he's over in the UK. And I really like the question. Here's what it is. Got a question. I would appreciate your expertise and knowledge. I feel like what's holding back my CrossFit progression is my skills, especially under fatigue. I can do most generic functional movements. However, certain skill-specific movements such as bar muscle-ups, ring muscle-ups, snatches, toes to bar, chest to bar pull-ups, double unders, for example, I'm struggling to progress any further in. What seems to happen is that I focus on one thing, I do a workout, then I realize I need to work on something else, and then I change tactics. Should I be focusing on individual movements, one at a time and just sticking to it? Or should I let CrossFit do its CrossFit thing and let time kind of work it out? Maybe I'm just being too hard on myself.
Ooh, this is a great question. And already my brain is going in a lot of different directions with this one. So, first things first, I think as with so many of these questions, there's a lot of middle ground between do I go all in and only focus on one thing, or do I just let the chips fall where they may? I think there's plenty of middle ground that you don't have to decide between that binary. So maybe that's where I'll start, is just by saying, hey, I don't think that's the choice. I think there's lots of other ways to strategize here.
Okay. What I'm going to say is, I think what you are expressing, maybe you feel like you're in a unique situation, but I feel like all of us have been in your situation. I feel like you're expressing the most common situation in the world, because think about it. What you said is you find yourself struggling with the more complex, aka the more difficult, the more technique heavy movements while you're tired and fatigued. Like, of course, is what I would say. The most difficult and complicated things are just that. They're the most difficult and complicated. If you're doing them slowly, they're complicated. Now, if you do complicated things quickly, they become even more complicated. Now, if you do complicated things quickly while fatigued, of course, it's exponentially harder. So I would just frame it with, I think what you're experiencing, Ben, at this stage in your fitness journey is absolutely ubiquitous, common, and we've been there, and hopefully we can help you kind of, break through that plateau.
Yeah, that is absolutely 100% correct. Both the compounding issue that you just outlined there and the fact that welcome to planet Earth. It gets hard to do hard things, especially when you're tired. So
right. Yeah,
so
do hard things quickly tired.
Yeah, for sure. So I getting to kind of the root of the question about, okay, how do you start to approach this? I think it's really important for everybody to at least have a mental list of the things that you need to work on that are kind of top priority. And that list could be 5 movements long. It could be 20 movements long. I mean, you can kind of decide what you think really needs prioritization there. But I think that's kind of the name of the game for any, CrossFitter who's taken it somewhat seriously, is that you'll have some way of knowing, okay, these are the things I need to work on. For example, I can think off the top of my head, I'm like, man, my lifting right now across the board is something that is sorely not practiced enough. And I can see it in the numbers that I'm able to put up, specifically in the Olympic lifts, as I haven't been practicing them as much lately. It's like I have that tip of the brain, and so that can help to inform some of the decisions if I'm programming for myself, what I should be working on more regularly. But if I'm not programming for myself, that can start to inform, okay, well, what do I do in the in-between times? What do I do when I've got some time to warm up on my own or cool down on my own? What do I do when I'm at home and maybe I'm not going to the gym that day, but I have access to a PVC pipe or, even just an open barbell? Can I be doing some technique work, et cetera? All that to say that it starts with having kind of top of mind, what are these things that I need to be working on? And it sounds like Ben has a pretty good sense there. So he's already ahead of the game in that sense, which is great. So start there.
Yes, start there. And then I would say, the very last thing you asked, am I maybe just being too hard on myself? The answer to that's probably yes. But that being said, let's see if we can't get you on a path. And so whatever terminology you want to use, right? Are these the things that's holding him back? Or are they just think, first of all, holding you back from what? You're probably still achieving a lot of fitness, right? Holding you back are just areas that need improvement, of which all of us have those things, even after 20 years of CrossFit, so that cat's out of the bag right there.
And they're going to ebb and they're going to flow too.
Yes, sir. And
what's strength today may be a weakness 10 years from now, depending on how your training unfolds. So
quite true. Now, for some of these ones that Ben specifically mentioned that are the more complex movement patterns, what might be really helpful to him is like a really honest analysis of why is it that you're struggling with these particular things, right? And this is going to be an oversimplification. We could probably do a 2-hour show on this, but let's just take, something like ring muscle ups or toes to bar or something like that, or chest to bar pull up, where there's, getting back to like good old Greg Glassman, CrossFit steeped in tradition 101. There's some organic components to those things and some neurological components, right? I mean, if you have a ton, if like this guy's a beast at strict pull-ups, so strong with the strict pulls, and he pulls so high, it's ridiculous, and dips for days, weighted dips, doesn't have a muscle up. Okay, it's probably not a strength or a flexibility. Like it's probably not the organic deal. It's a technique component right there. Like you've got that classic, contract out potential, like, but you're not productively applying it, So I would say, think about what you got going on. Do you have a pretty darn good base of strict strength? I'm talking pull-ups, really high, really strong, rather effortless. Same thing with the dips, full range of motion, strict, strong. Can you add weight to those things? You want to do toes to bar. Can you do a set of 15 to 20 strict as possible, like touch your toes with the bar for just pure midline strength? Like if the answers to those are yes, then some of your issues might be, just tying together the technique, the coordination, accuracy, agility, and balance. But if the answer to some of these is like, well, it's funny that you mention it, pull-ups have always been an issue, or, dips a big, whatever it happens to be like, then I would start like, let's get you stronger at the strict work.
Yeah, I agree. And to follow up on that, I think that everybody with some of these skills is pretty aware of where the breakdown starts to happen when it does happen on just the technical side. So we take the bar muscle up. That's a great example. The chicken wing technique is a very common one, particularly when you're learning and then particularly when you start to fatigue. So even somebody with really clean technique, you catch them at the end of a workout, it can look pretty rough around the edges.
Still counts.
Yeah. And so a lot of the reason behind that, well, let me back up. You should ask, why is this happening? And what is, kind of the culprit of the breakdown? Oftentimes when you get deep in a workout and the technique starts to fail, particularly with the bar muscle up, is because you're no longer being patient through the positions that allow for the best transition. You're trying to rush something because you're tired and because you don't, the body on some level recognizes that maybe it doesn't have the energy to go through that full transitionary motion in such an efficient path anymore. And so it tends to convince you to rush things. Okay, so knowing that, I kind of go back to the threshold discussion from the old L1 material, where it's like, all right, any skill that you're trying to learn, if you're only learning it under the most perfect conditions and you never push yourself past flawless execution, no matter what, you're never truly going to master that skill, because we all know that, perfect conditions don't exist. Or if they do, they're artificial and they're not going to last.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's all you expose yourself to, well, it's going to be a problem down the road. Now, on the other hand, if, like you said, it's like, hey, as long as I got to the top of the bar, I count it. It doesn't matter. I just throw myself at it. And if I get up there, it's good enough. Well, you're not going to refine the finer points enough to truly master the technique either. And so there's a middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once you get past that initial stage of learning the movement, you have to stress test it a little bit. Now, that stress test, like I talked about in the beginning of the episode, it doesn't have to be perfect condition versus I am completely wiped out and just about to collapse from fatigue. There's plenty of ways to progress that. And so I would start to think about this in terms of, number one, do I have the skill fresh? Yes. Great. Now let's see if I can start to introduce some general fatigue. So riding something like an air bike or coming back in from a run, something that doesn't have a lot of specific overlap with the movement that I'm practicing, but will create some general fatigue. Can I come in and do a couple of clean reps after just that exposure? Great. Okay, let's start there. And that should be my practice beyond that basics. I'm going to start to get these reps accumulated that are clean, crisp, and confident under a bit of a stressful condition. Mm-hmm. And then once that starts to feel good, okay, maybe I ramp up that intensity of that auxiliary movement before I get back to the skill that I'm practicing. Cool. Once I feel like I've mastered that, and it doesn't matter how hard I run, I can come back in and I can rep out a couple of clean reps. Okay, now let's start looking at some movements that may have some specific interference. And can I do that and still get a couple reps? So maybe now, instead of running and getting myself generally fatigued, I'm going to do something like a set of push-ups, and not to failure, not something that's so, going to wring you out that you just can't get your arms straight, but get a couple reps in there, leave some in the tank, immediately hop up and see if you can still perform a nice crisp technique on that motion. Okay, great. When you can, let's start to stretch that exposure. Okay, and then the final kind of a step in that is to start to combine these elements of more general fatigue producing movements and more specific kind of redundant movements. And when you get to the point that it's like, okay, now I can do the running to get myself generally fatigued, I can do some push-ups to get myself more specifically fatigued, and it still doesn't make a difference. Okay, now I'm ready to really start stress testing this in a multitude of environments. So that's the way that I would start to approach this.
I like
Skill
that.
up front, general fatigue as the second step to see if I can start to push the boundaries, specific fatigue, and then a combination.
That's a cool strategy that we can actually try and lay out. And I'll, to keep filling Ben's head with different things, so I previously chatted about you need to develop some of geeking out the organic components, right? Your strength needs to improve, and there are ways you can do that. And that should generally help you. The other side of the coin is there are some movements you might be struggling with, or some of the ones that you mentioned that are most likely not a failure of strength or those organic components, not your cardiorespiratory endurance, not your flexibility. For example, the double under. There's a really good chance that you can jump 2 inches off the ground and spin your wrists. That's literally all you need to do. But why a double under is so darn challenging and frustrating to people, because it's not the strength, it's not range of motion, it's totally the neurological components, the coordination, accuracy, agility, balance. It's the proper, beautiful sequencing of effortlessly bouncing off the ground, and the rope goes under twice and your wrists are doing what they should do, and that's all beautiful. That isn't going to come with a bigger back squat, a faster mile, or whatever it happens to be. That's just flat out practice, right? You don't need to get stronger. You just need to practice. And the nice thing about something like if double unders are troubling you, not only do they come up regularly in workouts, but that's something that you can put into your warm-up a few times a week, just some dedicated dumbbell under practice. It's not going to beat you up. It's not going to, take away anything from your workout of the day. And you'll be able to make meaningful progress by just practicing something like that more regularly, more frequent touches, because maybe as regularly as it's coming up with your programming, it's just not enough to advance that practice side of the house based upon where you are. I would also say, and I would encourage everybody to feel that they have the freedom to, understand the intent of the workout, but look, we're just working out. Let's not get crazy. So allow yourself some freedoms in the workout where you can blend the worlds of getting fitter and practicing something. So maybe something has double unders. It's Annie, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10 of double unders and sit-ups. And you're like, that's a nightmare workout for me. It takes me 25 minutes. Like, no worries. Maybe you just, for each one of those times, instead of saying you have to do 50 double unders and 40 double unders, you're going to give a set amount of time to just jump rope. And so your Annie is going to be 1 minute of double under practice and 50 sit-ups, 50 seconds of double under practice, for whatever it happens to be. And then whether you get 1 repetition or 50 repetitions, you're not frustrated. You don't feel like it was a wasted session. You're constantly moving. If you trip, you step through the rope, you go again, and it keeps you on track. So you can work things into that. Now, is that a prescribed Annie? No, you'll probably have a nightmare trying to figure out how to log that, but who cares? Like, log it, write in the notes section what you did, and it's just a meaningful, useful metric for the next time you do it. If you actually remembered how many double unders you did total, next time it comes up, do it the exact same way and see where you land. Or even play with, like, heaven forbid, one of the classics, Fran, right? Do Fran. If you're struggling with pull-ups, like, you're not too bad on thrusters, but pull-ups are hit or miss. You've got 5 strict pull-ups, kips, like, okay, but if I do Fran, it's not going to be short and sharp. That's okay. Play with it beforehand. Figure out a band that gives you, here's what I'm going to say. Developing strict strength with pull-ups in a workout, bands are your friend. And the band you want to use is the band that is not your friend. And so what I mean by that is choose one that gives you less help than you want. If you choose a band that you do an unbroken Fran, you should congratulate the band, not yourself. Okay, that band did the work. You want to choose a band that you're going to do maybe 3 difficult sets of 7 to get that first set of 21. Now you're taxing the system. You're not just blowing through it, but you didn't slog through it either. Like, you replicated it in a way that you're still using your lats and upper body, and you're trying to fire your body in the right way for a kipping pull-up if you chose to do the kipping with a band. And it was hard work for you, and you preserved the general intent of the workout. Like, there are ways that you can do that, or you could do bands hanging there ready. You drop the thruster bar, you do your 5 strict pull-ups, and you are maxed out. And then you chose a more friendly band because you just maxed out your strict pull-ups. You hop up there, and 2 more sets get you to 21. You do the 15 thrusters. You do a max set of dead hang. Maybe it's 4. Then you grab the band, and it gets you 2 sets and achieves you 15. Like, that's a Frankenstein kind of a Fran. I guarantee it's going to be a gut punch, just like Fran is. And you're going to work in a mixture of strict strength and the technique for kipping. And you're going to do it while under fatigue with something that gives you just enough help to keep going. Like, there's limitless ways that you can play with these things. If you didn't want to do something dedicated on the side, like, you could modify the workout of the day as your strength and conditioning IQ improves and you understand that you have this freedom, and make meaningful progress if you do these things every now and then. So it's a blank canvas, really.
Yeah. One approach too that I really like that's along the similar lines is to just do a variable rep workout. Meaning, okay, maybe the workout is as simple as 5 rounds of 400-meter run and 10 bar muscle ups. This is the skill that, Ben's working on. Okay, great. That's how it's written. That doesn't mean that you're going to do 10 bar muscle ups every single time. Set the parameters ahead of time. All right, I'm going to do bar muscle ups until they are no longer technically great and crisp, or I'm going to do bar muscle ups until I get to the point that I can't do more than a single rep. You know what I mean? So maybe you come in back from that run, you rip out 3 or 4 reps, come off the bar, rip out a double. And at that point, you're like, you know what? It's going to be singles. Okay, we've got enough for the round. Back out on the run. Yeah, you didn't achieve 10, but that wasn't the primary goal anyway. The primary goal was, can I string them together? Can I keep my technique crisp? Is it not stopping me in my tracks? Can I keep a general level of fatigue up while I'm still practicing this skill? And so you just simply move on. Now, The danger in that is if you're recording it as if you did all 50, well, of course, that's a problem. And especially if you got people around you that are kind of eyeballing you like, hold on a second, how come he's back on the run already? But if you state that intent up front and you use it as part of a, well thought out approach, there's no problem with that. And in many cases, I think you're probably going to have a much better workout if you have that mentality going in. It's like, all right, in order to preserve the intensity, in order to preserve the idea that I'm trying to train this skill with crisp technique under fatigue, I'm going to allow myself to move on. No harm, no foul.
Yes, and getting back to some of the things which are more technique, or let's take one that's a blend of both. The snatch, right? Obviously, being strong, which is one of the organic components, that's going to be your friend if you want to snatch well. But the snatch is such a huge technique lift as well that if that's something which you're struggling with, most people don't need to put just more weight on the bar and try to yank it hard off the floor, right? I mean, if you're squatting and deadlifting and box jumping and power cleans, developing explosive hip opening, like you're developing all the musculature needed that's going to help your snatch for sure. What would probably also help you, much like the double unders, is just practice. And you could do something like snatch practice 2 or 3 times a week, light barbell, empty bar, Bergner warm-up. I mean, something like that. Just more regular touches that aren't beating you down, but they start working that movement pattern and getting it into your brain where it becomes second nature. You work on one fault until it's not that big of an issue, and then you identify the next one during your practice till it's not that big of an issue, and then when you start to put plates in the bar, even though you haven't quote unquote lifted heavy in the snatch for a while, there's a really good chance that you're going to snatch better, because especially because something like that is just such a technique beast. And so again, getting back to everything that you said there, Adrian, the different techniques to approach these things with the variable reps, identifying whether it's, one of those classic organic components. Is it more of a practice and technique and neurological issue? Is it a little bit of both? And there's a whole bunch of ways to attack this. So hopefully that helps. And I'll end, I think I'm ending, but I'll end with one final thing that I'll say, which is, let's say that you're decent. Let's say you're generally decent at all these things. Okay. Like not too bad. And maybe you are just really being hard on yourself. But you feel like your breaks are too big before you can hop back on the bar for another set of chest to bars. Your breaks are too big before whatever. Like you tend to stay fatigued a little bit longer than somebody else. I can't say this is happening for sure, but just make sure you're not one of the people who think that going long is going to ruin your gains, right? That there's something to being well conditioned, right? I mean, if you're very well conditioned, obviously you still want to be getting stronger and be going very short. I get that. But like that, just monostructural conditioning, like your body's ability to process oxygen, like if you're in better cardiorespiratory shape relative to your level of strength and everything else, there's a really good chance that when you have to break something up, you will feel ready sooner than somebody less conditioned to hop back on the chest-to-bar pulls or to pull the deadlift bar again. So just a straight up conditioning component as well might also help everything else in there.
Couldn't agree more. And you see that in sports all the time, particularly high skill sports that have a long duration, where you might have somebody who's a superstar at the beginning of the game, but if their conditioning can't keep pace, then they just look like below average by the time the end of the game rolls around. And that's a very, very humbling experience if you've ever been in a situation like that, where you're like, I know I have this skill, but I am so fatigued I can't display it. It's an awful feeling. And it really is the reality that, if you are better conditioned, you'll be better able to display that skill longer. So couldn't agree more on that one.
I think that's all I got, brother. Do you got anything else?
No, me too. I think have at it and be patient. I mean, these things take a long time to refine. It's not going to be a linear trajectory in most cases. That's true for most things in life. You're going to have some great steps forward, and then you're going to come in one week and it's going to be like, man, I thought I was better. What happened? You're going to feel like you're moving backwards a little bit. That's normal. Don't freak out.
100%.
Just be patient.
All right, Ben. Well, we hope that helped you. Of course, everybody listening, we appreciate your support, whether you're watching or listening in the podcast format. If you've got ideas, topics, whatever it happens to be, thoughts on this or something else, go to the btwb YouTube channel, find the show, post in the comments. We check those out. They drive future content. Or go to the Very Not Random Instagram page, you can leave a comment under just one of the daily photos, or you could send a direct message, which is actually how this comment came in because Ben didn't want his last name out there. So just send it and we'll, we have a little database of all the ideas and they make their way into future shows. So much appreciated, everybody. For Adrian Bosman, I'm Pat Sherwood, and we'll see you next time.